For those of you who are online, I see your prayer concerns. Sometimes there's a big delay, and so it takes a minute for those to get in, but we are definitely praying for you guys. Linda is asking us to continue to pray for Lisa Price. So remember her in your prayers this week. Has liver disease. Was told this week she won't be a candidate for a liver transplant because her bowels are shutting down. So very, very tough situation there for Lisa Price. And then also Cecilia asks us to pray for her sister Christina. She's dealing with COVID and pneumonia and in the hospital. So, boy, I tell you, there's always a lot to be praying for, and there's always a lot to be thankful for as we sit here this morning, right? And so this morning we are going to be looking at a story, and it's from the Old Testament. It's from the book of Daniel, chapter 6. So if you have your Bibles and you want to turn there, you can, Daniel chapter 6. But the title of the message is No Matter What. Can you say that with me? No matter what. What are some things that you do every day, no matter what? You make your bed, no matter what. Yeah. Drink coffee. Yes. Eat Cheerios every day. Okay. Brush your teeth. I thought you was like a health guru or something. Oh, I guess Cheerios is better than cinnamon Toast Crunch. That's what I eat. That's close to the same thing, isn't it? I thought it was pretty close to the same thing. What else do we do no matter what? Huh? Yeah, you go to the bathroom, right? Hopefully you change your clothes and put some on, right? And get a shower, put on some deodorant, those kinds of things. Absolutely. But there's a whole different set of no matter whats. Some of us are going to do some things, no matter what, the consequences, right? Like, I'm probably going to eat chocolate chip cookies at least 5 nights a week. Well, there's 7 days in a week, so I take a couple days off. But, at least 5 nights a week, probably for the rest of my life, no matter what. That's just going to...
If you run out, you just go get some more?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Kroger's is a half a mile away. Yeah. But there might be some consequences with that, right? Yeah, we don't know. And so we are stubborn people, aren't we? I mean, when we get it in our head that there's something that we are going to do, there's not much that can stop us from that. And we all have these things in our lives that are no matter what. And so we're going to look at this story from Daniel because he's got some no matter whats as well. The background of this story is that it's about 600 years before the birth of Jesus. The Israelites and Jerusalem has been attacked by the Babylonians. And so their temple, God's temple, has been torn down. The people have been taken into captivity. And Daniel is one of these folks that's been taken into captivity. And so throughout the years, as he's in captivity, one of the things that happens when you read the book of Daniel, you read the first 6 chapters, you find that Daniel gets called on by the king to interpret dreams. And so he grows this reputation. God kind of raises him up over the years to be a respected person from in exile. He's from Judah, but he's a good interpreter of dreams. God's given him this ability, so he has favor with the pagans, with the Babylonians. How many of you know that you can have favor with God, and it shows up in favor with people who aren't Christians? It shows up in your community. It shows up in the way that you live your life. People begin to respect you and see God in you, and even though they might not be Christians, they say, that's who I want working for me. Or that's who I want to head this project. Or those are the people that can make this community a better place. It's interesting that non-followers of Jesus look to followers of Jesus for the right information or the right commitment or the right level of integrity to get things done. And so Daniel was one of these people. So there's a new king, King Darius, And he appointed Daniel to be one of 3 managers over the rulers of Babylonia. Isn't that crazy? Now this Christian guy, this God-fearing Jew, is one of the leaders over top of the leaders in Babylonia, in Darius's reign. And so there's some jealousy that happens. In fact, they find out that Darius is about to elect Daniel as second in command, just right below Darius, and they're like, oh no, we can't allow that to happen. And so in Daniel chapter 6, verse 4, it says, at this the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charge against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable. Everybody say unable. They were unable to do so. The very next sentence says, they could find no corruption in him. I love that. They're looking. They're digging. They want to take this guy down. They want to discredit him. But they could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Let me ask you a tough question. If someone was wanting to tear you apart, could they find much on you? If someone wanted to discredit you, could they just say, well, look at their work history. They've had 15 jobs in 15 years. They're not reliable. They quit everything they start. They were deceptive or misleading or promised a lot and just delivered very little. What kinds of things could people say about us that might discredit us? And maybe even more dangerous, what if someone got a hold of this, your phone, and went through it? What would they find? You know? I mean, maybe in this room you guys are like, nothing. But I can guarantee you that the younger a person is, the more this is the truth teller of what their life is about, right?
They'd find out I didn't know how to use it.
Yeah, that's right. They'd go, well, this guy didn't even know how to use his phone. There's no pictures on here. There's no Google searches. No dirt. Yeah. I wonder what would happen if someone targeted us. In fact, I wonder if sometimes if we're living such a righteous life with God, and I'm not saying we got to be perfect because we can't be, but if we're people of integrity, God gives us favor, doesn't he? He shows us favor. And the enemy is going to try to take it from you. He's going to try to take away God's favor by attacking your character. That's why character is so important. I mean, hopefully when people think about me as a pastor of a church in Hebron, hopefully they say, well, he's an honest guy. He's a loving guy. He's a dependable guy. You know, hopefully they know that my commitment is to Jesus and him alone. I'm sure that if they went and interviewed my kids, I'd be in trouble. That there are seasons of my life I'm not proud of. There are seasons of things that have not reflected well of my commitment to Jesus. But right now, in this moment, I pray that would be the case for all of us, that they would find nothing to hold against us. And so when that doesn't work, when they can't find anything against Daniel, verse 5, it says, finally these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God. They begin to attack his faith. So these administrators and satraps, they went as a group. Now, I think this is interesting that this looks a lot like church politics sometimes. That there's this group that forms that doesn't like the leadership's decisions. Isn't this interesting? We're very blessed to have a good bit of harmony in our ministries, but I can't tell you, how many of you have been in a church where a group formed to cause trouble or to revolt? I mean, there's always something that begins that. So it says, they went as a group to the king and said, may King Darius live forever. Your royal administrators prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all, everybody say all, have all agreed. We've gotten them all together, all the leaders together, and they all agreed. Well, guess who was left out of the meeting? Daniel, one of the leaders, one of the top leaders. But they lied to the king. They said, yeah, everybody was at this meeting, and agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree in writing. Now, just a clarification that the Medes and the Persians, since Babylon had taken captive of Israel or Jerusalem and God's people, the Medes and the Persians have become over top of Babylon. And so anything that he puts as a decree becomes set in stone according to the Medes and Persians. In other words, he would get in trouble or be punished if he didn't follow through with what he promised. Verse 6 again says, they went as a group. Have you ever been a part of that group? Have you ever been a part of that group? It's interesting to me that number of times that we as human beings gang up when we want to prove a point. Maybe it's against our family member, or it's against a neighbor, or we've got in our neighborhood, we've got, Lake Forest community, and then Sunset Drive is the main left that goes into our community. And somebody that doesn't live in our community is parking all their extra cars along the entryway to that neighborhood, to our neighborhood. And you got to kind of drive around them. And, when it's time for school, then the cars line up on the right side of the road while they're watching their kids get on the bus, which I think is great. But there's going to be very little room to come in and out of the neighborhood on a given morning because this one person has like 8 cars. And so they're parking them in the neighborhood. I can tell you right now that in just a little while, there'll be a group. No one, and I'm just going to stay out of it, but no one's going to just go over there and say, hey, man, that's starting to drive us crazy. Nobody's going to do that. They're going to get a group. And they're going to say, we've talked to everybody, and everybody thinks. Isn't that what we do? We overgeneralize. Satan loves to put us in situations, and this is what he's doing with Daniel. He puts Daniel in a situation where he has to face the choice to compromise his faith. I've got the choice. I'm either going to pray to King Darius or I'm going to pray to the living God. But the decree has been put out there. I wonder, what are the choices that we face? Whether we're going to honor God or whether we're going to honor ourselves. Wonder what that looks like for us, Wonder what choices sometimes that we have to make where we're like, okay, I can do this for God, or I can honor God with this, or I can skip that and just go do this. Every morning, I get up and I do my devotions. Sometimes it's 5-10 minutes. Sometimes it's a half hour. It doesn't matter because God's not counting the minutes as some kind of a contest. But there are times when I'm like, man, I got up a little bit late or I got caught up in doing some things. I may not have time. You know what? Prayer should be like breathing to us. Prayer should be a no matter what. And so I try to make it a no matter what. That's what I'm going to do. So I wonder, when we look at what Daniel does, is this what we would have done? Now remember, Daniel's life is on the line. He's going to be thrown into the lion's den if he doesn't obey this decree. But in verse 10, it says, now, When Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows were open to Jerusalem. In other words, all these other jealous leaders could see into the room and see what was going on there. He goes into the room, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Pretty cool, huh? Daniel was committed to prayer no matter what. Are you? Are you committed to spending time with God no matter what? What do you, in our minds as Christians, what defines us as a Christian? What defines us? Is it that we go to church? Because honestly, that's not enough. If it's not part of who you are in your everyday walk with God, going to church once a week is not going to define you and not going to define your life. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be daily. He was committed to prayer. Wonder, for him, what would have kept him from prayer was, well, I might die, right? I mean, that's the choice he has. What might get in our way? I mean, it's not death we're looking at if we don't, if we decide that we don't have, it's usually something much smaller than death that interferes with our time of prayer. It's usually, well, I'm busy, or I'd rather flip through my phone and look at Facebook. One time I posted a post on Facebook that said, what if you spent as much time in prayer as you did on your phone? How much time would that be in prayer? I mean, it'd be a lot for some of us. A lot. I mean, sometimes I think we ought to take these things and just chuck them. Or shut them off. They're kind of expensive. Shut them off and say, listen, I'm just going to spend some time hearing God. There was a few weeks ago where my phone wouldn't work. And people would call me 5 and 6 times. And it didn't even ring. And then they'd text me and say, are you mad at me? I'll be like, no, man, my phone's not, what, did you try to call? I've tried to call you all day. And for a minute, you know what I was thinking? Well, this is kind of nice. I got a legit reason to disconnect from the world. My phone's broke. You can still text me, but you can't call me. It was nice. And so, I think sometimes we need that separation. Watch what happens here. Verse 11. Then these men went as a group, again, and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So I'm sure Daniel's saying, okay, God, he's on his knees at his house in his upper room. Okay, God, I'm doing this because I would not, it's a no matter what. You are my God. I'm going to speak to you, and I don't care what the consequences are. I'm going to honor you with my life, but God help me because they're going to throw me into the lion's den. And so they went to the king. This group went to the king after they found Daniel praying and spoke to him about his royal decree. And of course, the king's not dumb, but this group has to remind the king of the decree he made like he's an idiot, like he doesn't know. And so they're reminding him that he needs to throw Daniel into the lion's den. I like what they say in verse 13. They said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you. The king had raised him up to be one of the highest leaders in Babylon, but then they're trying to tell him that Daniel has no loyalty to the king. He pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. Wouldn't that be cool if somebody could say that about us? Huh? One thing I know about George, he's not going to stop praying for anybody. Wouldn't it be nice if we could put our name in that line? No matter what I know about him, I know he's praying. I know she's praying. And so They remind the king, and the king gave the order. Verse 16. The king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. And the king said to Daniel, I love this, may your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. A pagan king understood the commitment that Daniel had to his God, and he was impressed. May your God, who you continually serve, rescue you. Then a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring. In other words, he put a seal on it, kind of like you do a sticker or an envelope. You seal it so that when it's opened, everybody knows it was opened, right? Same thing with this lion's den. They wanted to make sure that during the night, nobody had snuck in there and let Daniel out or protected him in any way, including the king, which I like this sentence. It says, then the king said to Daniel, may your God who serves you continually. But then he says, verse 17 or 18, then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating, without any entertainment, which I'm sure the king had entertainment every night. He's the king. Without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. A pagan king is losing sleep over a Jewish follower of God. In our personal walk with God, there are things that we face in our life. Things that we face in our life. Some of you may be facing those things now or have faced those things where it rocks your faith to the core. And you're not sure if you can continue to believe or not. You're not sure what you think or what you believe about those things. And I think it's in those times when our faith is shaken. And listen, pastors go through it too. You know that, right? That pastors go through it too. I've been preaching almost every Sunday for 25 years. Sometimes you start to go through things in life or phases in life, and the only thing that you can hold on to is your no matter what. No matter what, I'm going to keep praying. No matter what, I'm going to keep studying. No matter what, I'm just going to be faithful to you, God, even when I don't feel like it, even when I don't think my mind is right, or I'm confused about things. I'm just going to keep on honoring you. And there was no question that Daniel was committed to God no matter what as well. But listen to this. There was nothing Daniel could do. Nothing he could do. His life was completely in God's hands. There was nothing he could do to get out of that situation. It was a no hope. Everybody say no hope. It was a no hope situation, and some of us have been in that situation. Let me just say that if you haven't been in that situation, you will be in that situation. At least in earthly terms. Sue has hope, but her hope is in eternity because she's left this life mentally already. She's probably seeing what we cannot see because God is surrounding her as she grows weaker, you know? And so there's nothing anybody can do. There's a no hope situation. And I really feel like sometimes we have to get to the point where there's no hope in order for us to see the true power of God. Agree with me on that? That sometimes there has to be no hope in order for us to see the true power of God. Because if we can say, well, Daniel climbed out during the night, who gets the glory? If they say, well, the king came during the night and snuck him out of there and then faked his exit out of there in the morning, who gets the glory? But if it's a no-hope situation, there's only one person that can get the glory, and that's God. And so, at the first light of dawn, the king got up. He hasn't slept all night. He probably hasn't eaten anything. He's been worried. I would say he's been praying to Daniel's God. God, I don't know you, but please save your servant. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and he hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? And Daniel answered, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the power that King Darius felt as those words came out of that lion's den? Now, I want to give you a disclaimer here. What I'm not saying, and what some pastors have said, probably over the years, Chris and I kind of talked about this when we're talking about Job. There'd be some pastors that might say, see, if you're faithful to God, nothing bad will happen to you. That's malarkey. There's no proof of that in the scriptures. In fact, when you look at the disciples' lives, when you look at Jesus' life, you see that a lot of suffering for their commitment to God. The point is not that God's going to rescue you every time you're faithful to Him. The point is that Daniel was faithful to God no matter what was going to happen. Live or die, you're mine, God. If I die, guess what? I get to go be with you. And if I live, I get to display your power. You get to display your power to all the people of all nations. It says, the king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel, in other words, the men who said that Daniel was in on the whole thing and understood that everybody agreed that we should put this decree in place, those men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Some people might have said, well, the lions weren't hungry. That's why they didn't eat Daniel. They didn't eat Daniel because the king snuck in there the night before and fed them a whole bunch of wildlife or livestock. Well, they were hungry because they devoured those who lied. Then, verse 25, then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree. What was his first decree? Worship me. His first decree was, only pray to me. His second decree, it says, and it's a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of who? Of Daniel. And I love this section. For he is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel, it says, prospered. Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. The result of Daniel's faithfulness was not, Daniel just being the center of attention. God became the center of attention. And his reputation, again, spread throughout all the nations. All the nations heard of God's power. Let's stand. 3 words. No matter what. Can you say them with me? No matter what. If we were to fill in the blank on this sentence, what would your fill in the blank be? I'm committed to blank, no matter what. What would that be? What would other people say? Because we might say something different about ourselves. What would other people say about you by looking at your life and seeing how you live your life? I'm not talking about strangers who don't know you, but I'm talking about people who know you well, your family, your spouse. Would they say, I know about my spouse or my loved one, no matter what, they're committed to this. Some of us might need to make some changes in our priorities. Maybe we let everything distract us from our prayer life. Maybe we are committed to God as long as things are going the way we want them to go, but when things get rough, we get mad at God. A lot of people do that. I've seen a lot of people walk away from God because something bad happened to them, and they were like, well, I didn't deserve that. I've gone to church all my life. Well, Jesus didn't deserve it either. It's not about what we deserve or don't deserve. It's that we're living in a broken world. This morning when Chris and I were talking, we said that when we live on this planet, who's the prince and the powers of the air? Satan. And until Jesus comes back, we live in that tension of suffering and grace. But God gives us the grace. Let's pray. Father, help us to be committed to you no matter what. Help us to put you first. Help us to, in times of challenge, when we're challenged to compromise our faith, to step outside of your will, Lord, that we would dig in hard, just like Daniel did, and that we will continue to honor you with our lives. And that because of that, your name will be spread as people know who we are and know what we're about, that we would reflect you. And so, Lord, we ask all these things in the name of Christ. And everybody said, amen. Have a great week. See you next Sunday.